Well, hello there, and welcome to another edition of Warbird Wednesday. My name is Fred Belle. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum, and today we are doing something a little bit different. We're going back to an aircraft in our inventory before we go to our next series that we're going to do for Warbird Wednesday. And today we are going to talk about Greg, my pusillanimous assistant. We are going to be talking about an iconic aircraft, probably one of the most iconic aircraft in the American fleet ever built in the military aircraft. But first, I'm football head. Greg has, in honor of the impending Super Bowl, who do you like, Greg? Rams? No, the Bengals? Bengals. Greg's a Bengals guy, so, we may be in trouble here. I got to lean towards the Rams. You got to lean towards the Rams, the home team. Out here in California, but I'm going to go ahead and get this football off my head and toss it off camera to Greg. Excellent catch, pusillanimous assistant. Now today, of course, I am standing in front of a B-17. Not any B-17. This is, Greg, the movie Memphis Belle. The aircraft that was used in the movie Memphis Belle, which actually started filming in 1989. Greg, if you give me an idea how long ago that was, June of 1989. So we've already done the model of the B-17, the production model of the B-17 with our Miss Angela, which is another B-17 in our inventory. We have two now, which is kind of exciting, an F model and a G model. I'm going to tell you the difference and how this got to be an F model in just a second. But we've already done that. So I'm going to go through the F model B-17 very quickly, the concept and where everything was headed at that time, and then we're going to specifically talk about this particular airplane because we get so many questions, Greg, so many questions on movie Memphis Belle. We're going to answer all your questions unless you send me something in the comment section today. So the idea behind the B-17, first of all, there were 12,000 B-17s built. There were 3,405 F models built. What is the big difference between the G and the F? The most identifiable trait of an F versus a G is that the F, like the one behind me in this model, I'll throw up a plan view. Greg can throw up one as well, but it does not have a chin turret. And the idea is it doesn't have that turret on the chin. Greg can throw up a graphic showing a G with a chin turret. This aircraft was 44-835-46. The aircraft behind me, it was built as a G model, Greg, originally. It was built by Douglas, if you can believe that. And our G model was built by Lockheed Vega, which is also very interesting. The original Memphis Belle was 4124485, and its construction number was 3470. Now, that's the original Memphis Belle. Now, what was the big difference and why did they do what they did? Well, American aerial bombardment at that time, the concept was high-level bombardment. The aircraft was named a Flying Fortress, which it got its name from some press, and we've covered that. We're not going to go back into it. But the idea behind it was rather simple. The airplane went in at altitude, at high altitude, built around the Norden bomb site, and it would fight its way all the way to the target. It would fight its way in, and it would fight its way out. What the Americans found out rather quickly was that the aircraft, as they started coming up against coordinated German air defenses, they found out that the aircraft simply could not pull that off. What ended up happening is the Germans were very, very good at fighter vectors. And what the Germans would do is they set up, as they realized what the Americans were doing with daylight bombardment and the British were doing at night, coming in at night at the cities in what was called area bombardment, the Germans became very, very good at setting up air defense over Europe. So what they would do is they would vector fighters in on these aircraft, on these B-17s or medium bombers or whatever was coming in. And the Germans had really good aircraft. They had the FW-190, the Butcherbird. They had the ME-109 in various variants. The last one was the G model of the ME-109. They had other twins. They had the ME-262. They had exotic airplanes like the ME-163. So the Germans had all kinds of very robust air defense. And what the Allies realized in 1943, as 1943 went on, as they were trying to fight their way in and do precision bombardment, again from altitude with these aircraft in daylight, was that really two things. One, the Germans, you know, when you go into combat, they say no plan survives first contact with the enemy. The reality of the situation was the Germans were analyzing the B-17, and they realized pretty early on that if you attacked a B-17 head on and you came right at it, now remember, Germans had, their fighters had a mix of cannons and machine guns. The Germans would come in and they would basically pepper the entire front end of the aircraft. One option is that they could kill the aircrew, they'd kill the pilot and the co-pilot, the bombardiers up there. There's all kinds of important stuff up in the nose of the airplane. The other thing was if they could get hits in here in the inboard areas, what's in there, Greg? Fuel tanks. They get the fuel tanks burning, and you know, I always say that's a bad day. And so the Germans realized very quickly that head-on attacks were very effective. Rather than trying, it was, you know, you get into a bomber box, which we've talked about the box before. Again, not going to spend a lot of time on it. You run the risk of colliding. These aircraft had crossover fire with these various turrets, and that's why they call it a bomber box formation. And they realized that if they could come in head on, and a lot of times what they would do is, who would they go after, Greg? Go after a flight lead. They'd figure out who the flight lead was in the bomber box, and they could disrupt that. So as the war started to progress, that became really difficult for the Americans. Now the Americans had to get to 25 missions. What happened at 25 missions? That crew rotated home. They rotated out. So that was the golden time for them. And the Memphis Belle historically was the first B-17 that got to 25 missions and was able to rotate out. In the early part of the campaign over Europe with the 8th Air Force, that was a major feat because the Americans were having very, very heavy losses, and they were pretty demoralized. Now, in terms of design, they came up with the turret. They added the turret to add firepower to the G. They offset the waist windows. There's other changes in the airplane, but that was pretty much the major changes in the airplane. The aircraft was not pressurized. The B-29 would come on after that. Never saw any meaningful combat in Europe, was really deployed primarily into the war on Japan as the war in Europe wound down. But they, B-17s were employed all over in Western Europe. Now, they weren't, Greg, which is interesting, the B-17 is a kind of iconic airplane when you think about that, but the B-24 was built in more numbers, which is interesting. The B-24 just doesn't get the love like the B-17. So that's a real broad brush cover on B-17. If you want to know more about the B-17 as a model, we covered it extensively, and maybe, Greg, we can throw the link in on Miss Angela, which covers the aircraft in a lot more detail than Norden bombsight and all that kind of stuff. But now let's move on to the movie Memphis Belle. Well, there were 5 airworthy B-17s that were used in the filming of the movie Memphis Belle. Sally B was also used in the film, as well as some other aircraft. There was a crash of a B-17, and you can find out about that if you want to go on to Wiki. And they actually lost an aircraft. But, and by the way, Sally B, to my knowledge, is the last airworthy B-17 in the UK, which I think that is a truism, although you can correct me if I'm wrong. But as I said, this aircraft was built by Douglas, It bounced around. It eventually ended up, it was a fire bomber. It did a bunch of other things. It eventually ended up in the Tallaght collection, and it went in from 1988 to 1989 over to Chino. They put her, and they made her look like an F, although it was a G, and cosmetically she looks like an F. And from 88 to 89, they modified her, and then she went over and started filming in June of 1989. So, you're saying, Fred, tell me about this airplane. I'm fascinated with this airplane. This aircraft, the movie Memphis, Belle, is one of the most sought after images that we put up in all of our social media. So let's talk shall we talk some turkey about this airplane? First, what we're going to do though, is we're going to talk a little bit about the Tallaght family. The late David Tallaght had one of the most amazing collections of warbirds in the world, and his family carries that on. A lot of these aircraft would not survive without the Tallaght family making sure that they're safe, and in this case, this is one of those aircraft. So what I want to do today, which is unusual, normally in Warbird Wednesday we salute a unit or a type or whatever. Today, there are a lot of families that have been involved in aviation that go way, way back. The Tallachets are one of them, and a lot of this history would not survive if it weren't for them. So I want to salute the Tallaght family. To what they do to preserve warbirds, to the Tallaght family, I salute you. Now, what am I doing today? I'm enjoying double cola. I popped it. It was cold. It was born in 1933, 160 calories, so a few more. Let's see, 39 grams of sugar. Whew, Greg, 78% of your daily equivalent. So you're basically, I'm going to drink this, pass out in a sugar coma, and that'll be the end of it. Made with sugar, although it doesn't say pure cane sugar, so they haven't gotten the marketing memo, Greg. All right, we're going to give it a shot. Greg, can't go wrong with cola. You really can't. This is, all right, I'll do another taste. This is a good one. Greg, you have spared me after 9 bottles of gruel. So a nice one there, Greg. So the aircraft went over in June and started filming, and the movie is history. You can go see it and look it up on Wikipedia or whatever. But the aircraft has toured all around the country. It has given rides. It's done all kinds of stuff. But here's the scoop on movie Memphis, Belle. Sadly, there was a crash of a B-17 in the northeastern portion of the United States. And what happened when that airplane went down was, and it happens anytime we lose a warbird, everybody's head kind of pops up, and we fly 14 aircraft. Everybody kind of looks and sees what happened. The FAA gets involved, the NTSB gets involved. And in the B-17, which is a 4-engine airplane, super safe airplane, the airplane, all the B-17s pretty much stopped for a while until they were trying to figure out what happened. 2 things that impacted the industry, and there are still other organizations that give rides in B-17s that have come back and are still doing rides. They fly under a thing called the Living History Flight Exemption. You can look that up. And they do a great job. But the insurance world changed drastically, and the cost of operating airplanes because of that just went kind of crazy. So a lot of these aircraft were grounded initially from that. Then on top of it, what else happened? COVID. COVID hit, and you did not want to be sitting in a B-17 and getting the Delta or the beta variant of COVID. So obviously air travel and everything changed for a while there. So subsequently, the aircraft sat for about 2 years. Airplanes, when you fly them, do not like to sit, and they get crankier and crankier as they sit, and this is no exception. Our conversations with the Tallaght and the Tallaght family goes back to, since I've been sitting in this seat, about 10 years. We've been talking back and forth. There was a decision to bring the aircraft out to warmer weather, which we are in a very low humidity, excellent aircraft storage and maintenance area because it's dry. There's not a lot of moisture. The weather is fantastic almost year-round with the exception of about 3 months over the summer. So the decision was made to bring the aircraft. Everybody agreed to bring the aircraft out here. Now, the aircraft had been sitting for 2 years. So when we did that, there was just an eruption on social media that the airplane was going to be scrapped. It was going to be put into mothballs or static. Well, that's just totally false. As you can see behind me, we have started, the props are off, all 4 props will come off. One of the things in aviation, there's a lot of inspections and maintenance that has to be done. The props are coming off to be maintained. The carburetors all have to be maintained. You know, we put a run-up to, and you could see, we put a run-up video up. You could see the run-up video. A couple of the engines are a little rough. That's because of the carburetor issues. So the carbs are going to come off. We're going to do the carbs. There's some oil leaks in the airplane that have to be dealt with. So that's all on the power plant side. There are some flight deck issues with instruments that we're also going to be dealing with. And then we're going to go through the airplane, redo the upholstery, do all the stuff, and get it ready so that it can be toured. There's some there's a little bit of tail wheel issues, but the idea behind it, and you get from what I'm talking about, there's a lot of maintenance that has to be done in the airplane, as well as spar inspection and a few other things. So, well, you're saying, well, what does that mean, Fred? It means the airplane will most likely see the air again and fly with us in the May-June time frame. So get your calendars out. I'd like to see the airplane operate with us for Memorial Day here because we have a huge event here on Memorial Day. We're going to try to make that happen. If not, in the May or June time frame, you're going to see the aircraft return to the air and it'll start flying again, and then you'll start to see it at air shows. It will appear with our P-51s and our other Warbirds. The Talashes, we cleaned the airplane when it came in because it was just filthy from sitting. So we cleaned the airplane. The Talashes like a rough look on there, like an operated look on our airplane. If you know anything about our C-47, we like the same thing. We don't like them to look like they just came out of the factory, because these were either bomb trucks or cargo trucks, and they didn't. Once they went out in the field, a lot of times they weren't hangared, and they were used hard, right? They were combat weapons. So we're going to clean the airplane up, but we're going to keep it to where it looks like it was deployed, and we're going to start touring the airplane over the summer and into the fall of this year. So what is that predicated on? It's predicated on making sure that we can get them. We have a maintenance department here, but we're going to need to bring some folks in. We're going to have to send stuff out to shops. So assuming all of that works, you'll see the airplane return to flight and return to service in a capacity by the middle portion of this year if we don't find any other surprises. Now, I know the question you're asking. The question is, I want to go for a ride in the Memphis Belle. Right now, the movie Memphis Belle. Right now, that's not in the cards, and we do not plan on flying the aircraft under the living history flight exemption, although it is our effort and our quest to make the airplane or have the airplane make airshow appearances and continue to fly. And as I said, it will fly and make appearances with our P-51s and our other World War II aircraft, our fighters. But at this point, there is not any plans in the books to go back in and have the aircraft operate under the living history flight exemption. We do have one of those. That may change. And so what I would say to you, if you want to do that, is stay tuned. It might end up happening, but at this point, we want to get the airplane back in the air and get it operating and where people can see it. So we're making that happen. So that's the plan, to bring the airplane back in the air, and the rough time frame as we know it right now. We will be giving updates. The exciting thing is the aircraft is going to return to the air with 2 P-51s, Tuskegee and with Bunny and Man of War. That's the image of that in and of itself is pretty exciting with a P-51 Escort, at least for me it is. So if you want to help out on the restoration of Belle, I'll have Greg put in the comment section a donation link. You can donate. We can use every dollar. Every dollar you donate gets the airplane back in the air faster. Also, we have created, Jason, in our gift emporium, has that's a pretty cool term. A gift emporium has created Memphis Belle art. We have this fantastic Boeing bag, which is really cool, Boeing flight bag. And there will be coming, and Greg can throw up the image if he has it, Memphis Belle tennis shoes. So you'll be able to get togged in Memphis Belle gear. So if you want to reach out to us, click those links, we'll get something out to you. Now, if you have come across us on Facebook or you've come across us on YouTube, hey, like the video, send it to your friends, subscribe, like us on Facebook. We can always use those give the gift of Warbird Wednesday to a friend. Everybody loves aviation, and we were going to stay with this. Our next series, we're going to do about 10 aircraft, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but we're going to do our next series, and we're going to work our way into the F-117 because we have the Houston Pavilion getting ready to open. So the Stealth Fighter is going to be here, number 833. It'll be on display. If you think about it, it's probably the great grandchild of this B-17, precision bombardment. That's what they were doing. Now, my name is Fred Belle. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day. Just a bit. No worries. I love you dearly. Welcome to the museum.
Photo bomber.
Have a good day.